Hi everyone, I guess Matthew here. I don't usually do parts with these types of stories, but this one's pretty beefy, and I could not stand sitting on it any longer. So this is going to be parts 1 through 5. The rest will be out later on. It's one that I've been sitting on for a little while, so I hope you guys enjoy what has been polished and put together so far. So, thank y'all for listening. See you in the next one. Now, let's delve into the dark together. Part 1. This is a bad idea. I leaned my head against the rain-covered window and watched the dark trees blur past. My stomach twisted into an uncomfortable knot. Carla rolled her mascara-ringed eyes at me from the passenger seat of the Civic. You always say that, Hannah, literally every time, and every time it's fine. Yeah, right. I frowned and counted off on my fingers all the times she'd been wrong. What about the facility in Nashville, or the docks in Charleston, or the unfinished subway system under Cincinnati? I still have nightmares about that homeless guy chasing us. From the driver's seat, Matt let slide a wry grin, even as he carefully maneuvered the low-bottomed car around yet another abandoned police barricade. He was pretty nuts. But hey, this isn't gonna be like last time, alright? This place is gonna be legit. I can feel it. Is that confidence or weed talking? Carla gave him a snide, sideways look, clearly trying to push his buttons. Both, baby. Ever the gentle optimist, Matt returned a carefree wink, and Carla suppressed a smirk. If we get caught and they test you go to jail. She picked at one polished fingernail, little chips of ebony paint flaking onto the dusty carpet. Nah. Matt swerved back onto the gravel road and pushed down on the accelerator. I'm cool when it comes to talking to the cops. You, on the other hand. The words struck true, and Carla crossed her arms in a faux annoyance, though I could tell they were teasing each other. Now, both Matt and Carla had been friends since the 8th grade, and they'd always been polar opposites. With 2 blue-collar parents and 5 siblings, Matt was laid back, peaceful and charismatic, the kind of guy who could make anyone smile. More than once, his charm had gotten us out of a tight jam when Matt talked himself into friendship with menacing street thugs, coked-out homeless people, and irate policemen alike. Carla, on the other hand, was high-strung, the daughter of a wealthy lawyer with a tough-love attitude and a knack for trouble. She'd been suspended twice in school for stealing candy bars from the vending machines, and she didn't even like chocolate. She did it just for the thrill, and to make her single mother furious. Between them, Carla and Matt argued about everything: politics, religion, social trends, and even flavors of ice cream. But there was one thing that brought them together. The same thing that bonded us all as friends, and had for close to 6 years now. We loved investigating the paranormal. Well, the word paranormal stretched things a bit. It started with a little blog back when we had to do a group project for computer science class in junior high, armed with a cheap digital camera, some flashlights, and a complete disregard for curfew. We dedicated ourselves to exploring every inch of our subdivision in Louisville. Carla was an unapologetic drama queen, her acting perfect enough to convince even me at times. Matt had a way of walking, holding his head, and whispering that made him seem genuinely alarmed, which paired well with Carla's fake terror. Together, they paraded in front of the camera, claiming to hear whispers in the storm drains, see faces in the trees at the park, and shadows moving in half-built housing developments. We got an A on that project, and slowly, our blog grew from kids playing around to an internet sensation. Soon, we were exploring truly creepy areas, including rundown sections of the city that made a haunted house look tame. I, of course, held the camera through it all. Terrible at acting, even worse at telling a convincing lie. I'd been the cause for more than one municipal fine because I'd admitted our true intentions to a security guard. But if I was good at anything, it was seeing things through the lens of filmmaking and finding the best way to make the scene feel real. Since graduating high school the previous May, I'd thought about going to college for film studies, but my parents were both working class, and I doubted working at a burger joint would be enough to foot the bill. Still, Doing this kind of stuff led me to explore my creative movie producer side, and I always imagined I was some kind of documentary maker off on a grand adventure. At least, I tried to, in between fearing for my life, legal record, and freedom every time the others got me into trouble. My parents didn't like Matt and Carla, for reasons that weren't all wrong, and I had to assure them over and over that I would be home in a week, in time for my 20th birthday party that Dad had been preparing for all this month. Man, I could go for one of those loaded chili dogs of his. I'm pretty sure he bought honey mustard corn chips, too. God, why couldn't we have just stayed in Kentucky? Slouched in the back seat, I eyed a few raindrops that slid over the glass of Matt's car.
Seriously though, a camping trip? People are just going to say we're copying the Blair Witch Project.
Matt reached for his jumbo-sized cherry slushie and took a long sip.
I hear you, girl. Really, I do, but I got it all worked out. This place hasn't been explored yet, not by anyone in the community. I checked 3 times, not one grain of footage about the new Wilderness Wildlife Reserve. We'll be the first ones, and that means we're free to create whatever kind of content we want. Ghosts, cryptids, anything. It's a gold mine.
Carla sat up and pointed out her window, a happy smile painted on her lips in the thick black lipstick she so adored.
Oh sweet, the moon's coming out, which means the rain should stop soon. Seriously, this is going to be awesome. We're going to get tens of thousands of views just within the first hour. Besides, it'll be fun for us to get out of the urban stuff for once. You know, try some nature-related scares.
Yay. Lyme's disease and tetanus. I hugged the camera bag closer to my lap.
And if we get caught? You saw those military guys at that first crossing we tried. Every road around this place has been blocked, and there were helicopters at the county line. They already have our license plate number from this morning.
Carla's tan face darkened at that.
It's a public road. They can't charge us with anything serious. They're not even National Guard. Besides, if some weekend warrior wants to take me to jail, he can talk to my mom. She'll sue them into the ground.
We'll be fine. As usual, Matt interjected his low-key ambience and flexed his neck back and forth to crack it. Those guys are just doing their job. Besides, they looked tired, so they're probably racked out in some barracks right now. If we run into anyone, it'll be a different crew, so we'll just play the dumb kid angle.
You always defend them.
Clara narrowed her eyes at him, with more than a little venom in her voice.
Literally anyone with a uniform. They're not all heroes, you know?
I'm a lover, not a fighter. Unfazed by Carla's angst, Matt drums the fingers of his free hand on the seat armrest. That's why I talked to the police, not you. Besides, my cousin's a Marine. They're not all jackboots, my little revolutionary. I couldn't help but grin. And despite herself, Carla bit her lip at his name for her, red tinging her sandy complexion. Matt and Carla had been unusually feisty with each other in the past 3 months, and when I'd almost walked in on them steaming up our hotel room in Lexington, my suspicions had been confirmed. Left or right, rich or poor, they had a thing for each other that no amount of arguing could break. And I thought it was cute, even if annoying at times. Ah, the modern melting pot. Emphasis on the pot. Should be another 5 minutes on this road before our turn. Matt glanced at his cell phone in the center console. At least, I think so. Man, service sucks out here.
They should put up better road signs.
Carla poked at her own phone screen in irritation.
And update Google Maps. I mean, seriously, every time I type in Barron County, all that comes up is freaking Wisconsin.
A flash of jade green caught my eye from the side of the road, and I jabbed my finger at the window.
There, what's that one say?
Matt slowed the car to a stop beside the rusty, dented road sign. It looked like no one had been out to replace the battered signpost in years, with tall grass growing up all around it, and the letters faded so that I could barely read them in the dark. A long gravel road branched off from the one we were on and plunged into the gloom, straight as an arrow. I found that odd, as most of the secondary roadways we'd encountered after driving into southwestern Ohio had been anything but straight. It's so dark out. If it hadn't been for that crummy sign, I never would have known the road was there. Carla rubbed at a foggy patch on her window and squinted.
Turpin Road. Is that part of our route?
Nope. With a sigh of disappointment, Matt eased off the brake pedal. We're looking for Bethesda Ridge Road. Good catch, though, Hannah. Let's keep going. I watched the night swallow up the little sign, its white surfaces backlit by the red of Matt's taillights. For a split second, I almost thought I saw a figure step out of the darkness to stand beside the sign.
tilting its head like a curious bird to watch us leave. Come on, snap out of it. There'll be plenty of time for creepy imagination stuff later. We drove on for another few miles before finally turning onto the road Matt had found on an old map stashed in the corner of a public library. I hadn't thought anything of it the first time he showed me, but Matt seemed to think it was worth checking out, since the bizarre map of Ohio showed 89 counties instead of the 88 that everyone knew there were. The last county, Barron County, seemed to have been added in the early 1900s according to the numbers of the old wrinkled paper, though there was no record of it anywhere to be found. Similarly, there was very little online about the new Wilderness Wildlife Reserve, but Carla came across a few different posts about it on some story-sharing site, which piqued her interest. The stories seemed like total crap to me, but Matt and Carla ate them up. And so we'd planned a trip to the forgotten wastes of the Appalachian foothills to run around in the hot, humid forests, pretending to be scared by things that weren't there. Made it. Matt put the car into park and cranked his knuckles in the way he did right before we got ready to do something borderline illegal. Who's ready to get some awesome footage? Carla grinned and glanced back my way. I'm ready if Spielberg is. In her typical rough-around-the-edges form of friendship, Carla had awarded me with the nickname Spielberg, as an indirect way of saying, even if your acting sucks, you're great at aiming a camera. While it sometimes felt more like a gift given in pity, no one else had ever given me any other nicknames, so I couldn't exactly be upset about it. We're all good back here. I put on my bravest grin, which ended up being half the size I wanted it to be, but it did the trick. Setting up camp didn't take very long, and since the rain had stopped, we were able to find a mostly dry patch of ground just inside a strand of pines not far from the car. Matt found some broken glass in one spot that he claimed might have been an old camper window, but we couldn't be sure. After the tents went up, our phones were turned off and dumped into a box in Matt's car, for legal reasons, according to Carla, and most of our surplus gear was locked in the trunk. With that done, we convened by the roadside. Remember, Matt handed a small LED headlamp to each of us. Just because there's hardly anyone out here doesn't mean we can get lazy. Red lights and low voices, that's the name of the game. And pray some farmer with a 12 gauge doesn't accidentally take our heads off while coyote hunting. Keeping my droll thoughts to myself, I spritzed on some bug spray and followed Matt and Carla down the quiet lane. We walked down the long, dark stretch of gravel for a good 15 minutes until Matt decided we were far enough from our campsite so as to not draw unnecessary attention from anyone who might see us. Like saboteurs in an old war movie, we scampered into the rolling grass on the other side of the embankment and walked right past a yellow, private property, no trespassing sign along the way. Inky shadows cloaked everything like a heavy layer of soot, reminding me that we weren't in Louisville anymore. With its bright street lights, hard-paved streets, and security cameras. Wet knee-high grass clawed at my pant legs, and thorny scrub brush swatted at my sides. The scent of cool, fresh rain hung in the air, far better than the stench of the city. But I couldn't enjoy it for the whiny cloud of gnats that howled in my ears. All I had on were a pair of slim-fit green cargo pants and a gray t-shirt, my hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and it seemed my bug spray was less than effective. Should have brought the stronger stuff. That's what I get for cheaping out on... Hey! Matt's voice startled me from my musings, and I looked up to see a tall, chain-link fence with barbed wire across the top. A huge gaping hole torn into the wire right next to where he stood. Whatever came through had pushed the fence wire apart, like it was made of rubber bands, and Matt could have driven his car into the gap without touching the sides. Check it out! We won't even have to climb. Mischievous twinkle came into Matt's eye as the crimson beam of his headlamp swept over the destroyed wire. Hannah, get the camera ready. This will make a great opening shot. The sight of the ruined fence sent a shiver down my spine. What could have made a hole that big? By all other accounts, the rest of the fence line looked well kept, not super rusty or overgrown. For something to just punch clean through woven wire fencing, especially with a line of barbed wire at the top, meant an animal with insane amounts of strength. Like what? A long-lost dinosaur? Seriously, Hannah, This is Ohio. Stop freaking out over every little thing. There's a reason Matt and Clara don't put you in front of the camera. In an attempt to ignore the harsh criticism of my thoughts, I pulled out the hefty camera that we'd purchased as a group, pushed the power button, and removed the lens cap. You want infrared, or? My eye caught a speck of color in the grass to my left. I paused. Tucked in between the tall blades of bluegrass, a single, dirty, white and gray sneaker lay discarded, its laces frayed. Scratches and gouges scoured the rubber, and there were a few dark stains that almost looked black, as if the shoe had been spattered in tar. I hadn't seen any footprints, though I wasn't exactly an expert tracker, but the thought that someone might already be out here and close by poured ice over my blood. Guys, come look at this. The other two clustered around me, and Carla's eyes lit up. Nice one. A missing shoe? A mysterious ruined fence? This is perfect. I stand corrected. We're going to clear 100,000 views in 24 hours, or I'll wear pink lipstick for a week. Matt nudged the sneaker with the toe of his own shoe. Don't bets with girls involve them wearing less, not more? Carla made a pleased, demure smile. Grateful that I had the camera to hide behind, I did my best not to sigh in jealousy. Must be nice. In spite of her gothic fashion tendencies, Carla was gorgeous. With jet black hair, sensuous Hispanic facial features, and generous curves where it counted. She could fill out her clothes in ways that made the boys back in high school almost break their necks when she walked by, something that enraged the preppy girls who had resented her Edgar Allan Poe clothing tastes. By comparison, I wore simple cargo pants and t-shirts, my limbs skinny, and the rest of me barely any better. Even though my grandmother insisted that my stuffing was just slow in coming, I had a suspicion that if one wasn't curvy by 19, that wasn't likely to change. I never admitted it to Carla or Matt, but these trips were starting to get more and more lonely, as I woke up night after night to them curled up in their motel bed while I lay alone in mine. With graduation now almost 2 years in the past, I had yet to go on a single date, or even hold a boy's hand, much less do whatever they did when they thought I was asleep. Being plain was hard, but being alone, that sucked. I'm in favor of Julian. I cut in, readying to press record on the camera. You know, for the list of baby names. You want the first shot of the fence or the shoe? The gate. Oblivious to my bitter sarcasm, Carla backed up the way we'd come and gestured for us to follow. We'll walk up and rediscover the shoe. No night vision for now. It'll be harder for the viewers to spot our tracks in the grass from before. Then we can focus on finding its owner, should they still be among this world. Her deep, dramatic tone made Matt laugh, and we slogged back a few yards to begin our shoot. I held the camera at the ready and gave them a countdown on 3 fingers. All right, guys, we're back. Matt flashed a thumbs up at the camera, and he and Carla went into their routine. This time, we'll travel deep in the Appalachian wilderness to a remote wildlife reserve that some people think is part of a secret government cover-up. Carla leaned on his shoulder with her hand. The two were a comedic duo if there ever was one. We have no idea what we're walking into, folks, so keep your fingers crossed. Remember, you're seeing this just like we are, raw and unfiltered. As raw as a burned steak. Behind the camera, I rolled my eyes at the last line, but trailed them back through the grass, and tried not to trip in the murky shadows. I always hated the fact that we bent the truth so much in our videos. Sure, they looked awesome when we were done, and as Matt pointed out, we were there to entertain people, but I still didn't like selling the idea that none of it was orchestrated. Dishonesty never sat well with me, but I had to remind myself that I was a filmmaker, a storyteller, and that was part of the storytelling process. We rediscovered the gate, and both Matt and Carla played the part of 2 stunned kids, oohing and awing over the gap, and pretending to be worried about what could have made such a large hole. Carla found the sneaker, and even dared to pick it up, always the method actress. Who do you think this belongs to? She whispered to Matt and held the filthy shoe up to the camera. Matt went into his tense, machismo stance, head cocked to one side, eyes probing the darkness like he was seriously concerned. I don't know. Maybe someone got stranded out here. Let's see if we can... As if on cue, the low rumble of tires on gravel echoed from the road behind us, and we all dove for the grass, headlamps clicking off. Brakes screeched their metallic staccato, and the unseen vehicle rolled to a stop 50 yards away on the road. I waited for them to move on, to throw some garbage out, but the truck stayed put. Why weren't they leaving? Bright white light stabbed at the misty darkness just overhead, and my lungs constricted. A spotlight. The heavy metal bolt on a weapon clanked back and forth, validating a dozen panicked theories in my mind. Now it made sense. The missing shoes, the lonely road, the soldiers. My heart began to pound. The wet grass stuck to my face, and something skidded across my palm with 8 spindly legs. Each shaky breath tasted of the rain and earth, and my ears rang with a nervous thumping of adrenaline. We'd seen too much, come too far, broken one rule too many, and now they were going to hunt us down. Carla's words rolled through my head in an eerie, mocking mantra, at the thoughts of my blood spattered over the grass by a burst of gunfire, with no one to witness it, save for the camera. Raw and unfiltered. Part 2. I squeezed both eyes shut and forced myself to breathe slow, counting every second that went by. How long until I heard footsteps, voices, shouts? How long until we were dragged out the ditch by our collars, surrounded by rough hands, maybe even... Hannah, get the camera up. For Pete's sake, get the camera up. Matt's whisper blasted urgently at me from the shadows, and I bit back a terrified reply. The camera. Maybe if I recorded everything, whoever was out there would be less likely to hurt us. Propping the camera up on a clump of sod, I dared to peek through the tiny viewing screen and clicked the button to toggle its night vision mode. Whoa. A mud-spattered pickup truck sat idling on the gravel tarmac, painted a mix of tan and olive drab green, with a strange rebar cage bolted over the windows and a box of square metal plates welded around the bed. On the door, I could just make out a white painted emblem that read, New Wilderness Wildlife Reserve. The metal covered in an array of dents and scrapes. Angle iron racks on the sides held long spear-like poles, some with sharpened points, others with green canisters that had little cotter pins in the tips, and several with round metal plates on the ends that made them look like oversized toilet plungers. Long spikes had been welded in various places on the vehicle's armored hide, many of them dented, rusty, or bent from some kind of impact. In the back, the upper torso of a man stood out the top of the plate armor, holding on to something long and shiny bolted to the roll bar. With the ambient light from the headlights reflecting off the linked brass cartridges, it didn't take an expert to know what it was.
What are they hunting? Godzilla?
Carla peeked from behind a small bush, her words laced with a tinge of surprise. We'd run into security plenty of times in the various places we'd traveled, but never anyone with a belt-fed 50 caliber machine gun in the back of their up-armored post-apocalyptic pickup truck. It almost looked like something out of an article on war-torn Syria, not sleepy rural Ohio. In a flash, the bright white spotlight from earlier swept across the fence line right over our heads, panning wherever the gun was pointed. Sweat beaded on my forehead, and beside me, Carla swore under her breath, Matt lying as still as a stone.
Hilltop, this is Rhino 1? Man's voice floated over the air to me, somewhat faint from the distance, but still loud enough that I could hear the unease in his voice. We've got a breach in the perimeter fence along Pasture D. It looks big, Sean, real big. How copy? Please don't come this way. My pulse roared in my temple, and I pressed myself to the cold, wet grass, like I was the cute guy from 4th period biology who had never worked up the nerve to talk to. I wanted to go home. This had gone from harmless fun to serious trouble in the time it took to cook a Pop-Tart, and I was already half soaked from lying on the wet ground. Rhino 1, this is Hilltop. If you don't see any resident animals in the immediate vicinity, report back here. I will send you out with a repair crew. How copy? The radio crackled back with a deeper voice, no doubt their leadership, and the truck engine revved once more.
Roger that, Hilltop. Rhino 1 copies all. We'll be there in about 10 minutes.
Off down the road it went, the headlights gradually moving out of sight, and I caught the sound of Matt's relieved sigh. Tell me you got all that on camera. I stayed hunkered down behind the weeds, too on edge to move yet.
Yeah, I got it.
Carla giggled in the shadows, and a moment later, her red headlamp flicked on to reveal a delighted smile.
Spielberg strikes again. I can already hear the new subscribers begging for more. We're so getting a plaque for this.
Maybe a tombstone. I allowed myself the liberty of rising to my elbows, cautious as a gopher in hawk territory.
I think we should go. Seriously, they seem really wound up. What if they shoot at us with that thing?
Matt combed a few blades of grass out of his shaggy chestnut hair and wrinkled his nose. I doubt it. What court's gonna uphold a couple of dudes machine gunning 3 kids in the night for the terrible crime of, drumroll please, trespassing, unarmed, with a camera and an old shoe?
Besides,
Carla sat back on her heels and fixed her lopsided black watch cap.
it's probably not even registered. They fire a shot, it goes to the ATF, and they'll be in federal prison for 20 years minimum. We've got nothing to worry about.
They both beamed at me, as if we'd just discussed the odds of getting free ice cream after school, and I gritted my teeth. This happened every time I brought up a problem, every time I suggested an idea wasn't safe or legal. They always talked me into more, and whenever it did go wrong, they somehow managed to bait me into another misadventure the next time they found a desolate place to film. I got to my feet along with them, and picked at the burrs already clogged in the cuffs of my pants.
Okay, but they said they'd be back soon, with a repair crew. They're gonna seal this fence, and if we go through... Seriously, Hannah, it'll take 5 minutes.
Carla narrowed her gray eyes at me in the way she always did when she didn't want to be argued with.
Just pick up the camera, and let's go.
You're lucky this thing is expensive. Hefting the camera, I threw her a glare that she didn't catch in the dark, and focused in on them. Carla in her typical all-black outfit with equally macabre makeup, and Matt with his Louisville Bats t-shirt and faded blue jeans. They straightened up, preparing for me to give them another countdown, and I raised my 3 fingers. A small blur tumbled from the trees just beyond the fence, the object hitting a brush on the way down. Both Matt and Carla whirled around, and I stared through the grainy night vision at the shadows.
Something's over there.
I gripped the camera with clammy fingers.
I saw something fall out of the trees.
Any other time, they both would have thrown me a dirty look for talking with the camera rolling, but instead, they took off before I could begin to stop them. Matt doing his usual hyper-alert walk, and Carla with her oh-so-petite parody of her real personality. Just like that, they dove through the hole in the fence, leaving me no choice but to groan inwardly and stumble after them. My canvas high tops slid over a greasy clump of mud, and I almost went down, muttering with frustration under my breath.
We had to go camping. There's a haunted mansion in Blennerhauset or a deep reservoir near Moorhead, but no. We drove to the middle of freaking nowhere, Ohio, to walk around in woods, and...
Hannah, come on, hurry up.
Matt waved at me with more than his typical performance excitement, and I pushed myself into a light jog for the last few yards. Carla's eyes glittered like she'd been given a chance to pick the school uniform colors and had chosen all black.
Look!
Another shoe rested in her hand, muddy and in tatters, with the same kind of weird ebony stains, only in different places. This one, however, wasn't a sneaker, but a brown leather dress shoe, the kind that some office worker might wear to a meeting. That didn't make sense. Why were there just random shoes out here? People threw garbage out in the city all the time, but to come way out here and dump shoes. I hid my disturbed frown behind the camera, still filming every second.
It's not the same.
Which means... Matt turned to Clara, who dropped the shoe and put up both hands for a double high five.
We've got 2 people.
They crowed in triumph, as if 2 shoeless people wandering the woods of godforsaken Idaho was a good thing. Another mosquito nipped at my ear, and I wished more than anything I could smack them both. I didn't like this. The entire thing tightened in my chest like a winch, and I was already soaked to the point I started to feel cold. There were no people in these woods. Some litterbug must have thrown his trash over the fence and sped off. Maybe a truck had crashed to the fence, and that explains the hole as well as the shoes. Either way, I wanted to go back to our tents to change into my warm, dry clothes and drive back to civilization for a shower.
That's right, fam. We got two mysterious people in these woods.
Carla crooned for the camera and held up the discarded loafer.
Which means we just have to keep following the trail until...
I nearly jumped out of my skin, my heart racing 1,000,000 miles a minute. Matt lost his smile, and Carla screamed. Not the faux, girly squeal she did for the camera, but a realistic, unnerved yelp of surprise. Less than 20 yards away, embedded among the thorns, dead leaves, and branches, lay a high-heeled sandal, its straps ripped, the cork of the heel coated in hateful black stains. With a camera viewing screen between my face and the real world, I felt like I was looking at the scene from the comfort of my living room, distant and detached. But my brain went into full alarm mode, everything about the situation giving me all the bad vibes in the world. We now had a third shoe, different from the others, and just like the last one, it had fallen. Fallen from somewhere up high. Somewhere in the trees, right over our heads. My heart drummed against my ribs, and I craned my neck back, lifting the camera to the tree branches overhead. Terror coursed through me like a tide. A faint static buzzed in my ears and crackled against the inside of my skull. Both my eyes stretched wide at the sight of more shoes, dozens and dozens suspended from the trees. Men's shoes, women's shoes, even little children's shoes, all dripped rainwater from their perches, like forgotten Christmas decorations left to rot. All of them bore black stains, and something in my head clicked at what the spatters, splashes, and dribbles resembled.
Guys?
I took a step backward, and my entire body shook from head to toe.
We have to go, right?
A figure hurtled through the underbrush nearby and fell to the mud in a scrabble of flailing limbs. Ragged clothes, a pale grayish foot missing a shoe, and matted, filthy hair, the color of mold-encrusted tree bark, glistening in the grainy light of my camera's night vision. His head snapped up with a sickening crunch of stiff neck vertebrae, and the man locked eyes with me through the camera. White, filmy eyes, and a long Cheshire smile beamed from the man's dirt-streaked face, exposing stubby, squared-off teeth that almost seemed carved, as if from wood. Both his hands were grimy and scarred, the fingernails chipped with abuse, and he had scores of black scratches all over him, the crusty scabs similar in color to the stains on the shoes. Oh my God. For a moment, we both blinked at each other, and try as I might, I couldn't command my muscles to move. Matt's eyes were wide as saucers, and he made no move to intervene. None of us had any weapons, since we didn't expect to actually find anything. Nothing real. Nothing like this. To my left, Carla let out a whimper and bolted. Like a gun had been fired to start a race, the forest exploded with high, piercing screams of animalistic glee. Jumping from behind trees, scuttling under the bushes, and crawling out from the high grass, a dozen creatures closed in from all sides. Their moon-white eyes flashed in the dark, grayish hands outstretched to snatch at my clothes in desperate hunger. It was as if they had been waiting for me, watching us since we'd crossed the road, and now I'd walked right into their trap. I turned on my heel to run and caught the sight of Matt and Carla well ahead, sprinting as fast as they could go. Too late did I notice the wall of shrieking assailants seal around me. The bizarre figures crouched on all fours, clacking their wooden teeth in anticipation. Screaming, I swung my camera like a club at the nearest one, but she just dodged the blow, her grin wicked and crusted with gore. A hand grabbed my ponytail and threw me to the mud. More cold fingers pinning my arms, shoulders, and legs, mouths opened wide. Cruel, knobby teeth descended towards me, and I writhed in unthinking panic. Out of nowhere, all the shoes from the trees rained down and thudded into a waist-high heap in the mud just outside the ring of attackers. All of the moon-eyed people froze, their smiles vanishing, and they looked at the shoes like deer in the headlights. One set of hands released its iron grip on my arm, and a wooden-toothed girl flew backwards, dragged by some unforeseen force to the pile of shoes. She wailed in a pitiful screech of fear and pain before the pile sucked her in, with the horrible sound of bones being ground to dust. Startled into action, the rest of the freaks abandoned their hold on me and tripped over each other to run away on all fours. In a great spherical cloud, the shoes lifted from the ground, levitating as if held in the air by some invisible hand. Jolts of something black and thin shot out from between each shoe, moving too fast for me to see properly, and each time the darkness reeled another crying, moon-eyed person to their doom. All that remained after the screaming, crunching of bones and a spray of black blood was the shoes of the dead freak, freshly stained and added to the cloud like satellites to a planet. Run, you stupid moron. Reality hit me, and I clawed at the mud, scrambled backwards to get away. The rest of the moon-eyed ones already went off into the distance. The levitating sphere now had only one thing left in the small clearing to consume, and a prickle rose on my skin, like thousands of tiny insect feelers. Something brushed past my right leg, fast and wriggling. With a wild thrash, I faced it, ready to bite, claw, and scratch to the bitter end. The sphere hovered right over me, maybe 6 feet away at most, the shoes deathly still. Static rang in my ears. Whispers echoed in my mind, and all 4 of my limbs became heavy as lead. I could see it, just behind the curtain of lost footwear, horrifying enough to lock me in place. An eye, surrounded by molten, greasy black sinews that curled around each other in perpetual motion. The orb watched me with an emotionless gaze. It was enormous, the size of a car tire, bloodshot and with crimson irises that seethed like flames. In my head, a disembodied voice chanted something over and over, a wordless, unintelligible mumble that rang deep into my subconscious like a cathedral bell. Black tendrils reached from between the shoes for me, and every time I tried to flee, pain flared in my limbs like knives were burrowed into the folds of my brain, controlling my every move. It was all I could do to stay conscious, the horror and adrenaline keeping the shadows in my mind at bay. Can't fall asleep. I can't let it take me. I can't. In the last second, my fingers twitched against my collarbone and touched something smooth. Gritting my teeth in pain, I forced my arm to jerk the chain from my neck. In all our trips across the country, I'd been chased by countless stray dogs, and so my parents had gifted me an electric dog whistle for just such occasions. The whistle had saved me many a time, and I got to where I touched it on reflex whenever we got into trouble. It was less of a reasonable thought, and more on childish impulse, that I pulled the whistle from my shirt front and clicked the tone button. Furious howls tore through my skin, followed by searing white-hot pain. I clapped both palms to my ears, screaming in agony as the whistle dangled from my fingers. My brain was being ripped apart, it seemed, shredded by some balded worm throwing a tantrum inside my cranium, and all my muscles spasmed in uncontrolled torment. Above me, the world began to spin. The dark mass convulsed, and the sky rained with slimy, gore-covered shoes. Harsh and cold, a jolt of electricity sliced through my mind, clearing away all thought, and I tumbled down into unending darkness. Part 3. I lay in a field of white wildflowers, the warm sun overhead making me drowsy. Someone had their arms around me, and I could smell a musky cologne that reminded me of chocolate. His face was a blur, but the stranger held me close, his calloused hands pressing down over my sternum in a way that made heat pool in my core. Soft, velvety lips met mine, and a tight sensation filled my chest like I would burst. "Come on," he whispered, his warm breath tickling my ear. "Wake up. Come on, Civvy, wake up." A heavy weight leaned on my chest, and my mouth shot open to drag a long, damp gulp of air down into my lungs. "I got a live one." A male voice echoed over me, and gentle hands cradled my head. Hey, can you hear me? I need you to open your eyes for me. Open your eyes, Civvy. Come on. My eyelids fluttered, and I blinked up at a pair of sky blue irises, bushy brown eyebrows, and a warm, relieved smile. Bright fingers of light cut through the murky woods around me, flashlights mounted on the ends of rifles held by dozens of people dressed in black polo shirts. A few trucks sat near the fence, and I could hear the crackle of radio chatter. Jumbled piles of old, smelly shoes lay clustered around me, partially covering my stomach and legs. A metallic taste stung the inside of my mouth, and my ears rang with an irritating tone. It's okay. I've got you. The guy looked to be in his early 20s, with broad shoulders and the start of a stubbled beard. He had close-cut hair the color of maple syrup and wore a black polo shirt, over which was strapped a green bandolier full of rifle magazines. The barrel of a rifle poked from behind one shoulder, and I saw the words New Wilderness Wildlife Reserve stenciled on the breast pocket of his shirt. Is this a dream? I tried to take another breath, but my head spun and stars danced before my eyes. More coppery taste flowed over my upper lip, and pain pulsed in my temples. Jamie, get over here. I'm losing her. A girl appeared behind the boy, her beach blonde hair in a tight bun, a Kalashnikov slung over her shoulder. She threw herself down beside me and reached down to cup my face with both hands. Can you hear me? She stared into my eyes, turning my head with her hands, inspecting me like a ripe watermelon. Blackness nibbled at the edges of my vision, and it took all my effort just to nod. Blink twice if 2 + 2 = 4. Despite my dizziness, I managed to press my eyelids down twice in a row. She's not scrambled, but she's going into shock. The girl pressed 2 fingers to my neck, her skin cool and dry compared to my sweaty flesh. Jeez, Chris, did you break her sternum? No. Above me, the boy looked down at my face in despair, his expression starting to blur as my eyes wandered. I swear, I didn't push that hard. Just enough to get her breathing. A loud electro-synth foghorn ripped through the trees from somewhere nearby, and a strange metallic screech thudding rumbled closer. Technos! One of the other fighters pointed his rifle into the dark tree line, and the night came alive with the crack of gunfire. Everything tilted, and the shoes fell away as the boy lifted me from the ground like a sack of potatoes. We gotta go. Jamie, help me get her in the trunk. Trees crunched, brush snapped, and piercing white light flooded over the clearing. The blonde girl put her hand over my eyes and ran alongside the boy who carried me. You stay awake, you hear? In between the girl's fingers, I barely glimpsed the outline of something huge and angular clambering through the pines, its 8 gray legs skittering over the rough terrain with ease. Small, dark figures of the fighters surrounded it, and like something from a cave painting, they fired up at the colossal shadow with everything they had. Get the magnet spears! Bring it down! A deeper male voice bellowed, and long sticks flew through the air at the encircled thing, followed by the resounding clang of metal hitting metal. A trunk door creaked open by my head, and several hands pulled me inside a small, hot metal box. Tense faces peered down, and the boy who carried me leaned close, his worried blue eyes boring into mine. Don't you die on me. But shadows clawed away the light, pain throbbed in my head, and just before I blacked out, another long, strange foghorn blast echoed, like the roar of a prehistoric dinosaur. Darkness. Soft, smooth warmth covered my arms. The electric whining of machines hummed somewhere in the background, along with the distant chirp of crickets and the croaks of frogs. Crisp, acidic chlorine tickled my nose, and a cool breeze whispered past my cheek. My eyelids split open, and I inhaled. Ow. Breathing hurt. My ribs ached, especially around the front, and it took all my effort just to prop myself up on both elbows. What the? White cotton sheets lay over me, a small twin-sized metal bedstand holding me off of the tile floor. A thin blue medical gown hugged my body, and my hair flowed loose around my shoulders in soft brown rivulets. The bed I sat on was surrounded by a little alcove of hanging white sheets, and through the thin curtains, I could just make out a larger room beyond. It smelled of industrial cleaner, the walls lined with white painted tables and cupboards. A few metal trays stood next to some squat gray plastic machines that idled in the corner like waiting cars. Through the closed window just beyond my bed, I could hear the muted songs of insects and frogs on the other side of the glass. The lights overhead were dimmed, dark enough that I almost felt bad about saying anything, like I risked waking someone up.
Hello?
My voice rasped, scratchy and weak, as if I'd swallowed a bucket of nails. A swivel chair moved somewhere out of my line of sight, and the quick tock-tock-tock of shoe heels on the cold floor echoed closer. Shadows closed on my white cotton sanctuary, and I shrunk back into the covers, my heart racing. Slender figures drew aside the curtain, and I jumped, startled despite myself.
Well, good morning, kiddo.
A woman appeared dressed in a white doctor's coat with a light blue blouse underneath and tan slacks. Likely in her mid-40s, she was tall and slender with long golden brown hair pulled back into a functional ponytail. Her face bore many lines of fatigue, but she gave me a friendly, almost maternal smile.
Or rather, good evening. You gave us a scare back there. How are you feeling?
Confused. Swallowing, I coughed dry as a cotton ball and winced at how it stung.
My ribs kinda hurt. How bad? On a scale of 1 to 10.
I breathed deep on purpose, pushing my limits to see just how much it throbbed.
I guess like a 4, maybe 3 if I don't try too hard.
The woman ducked behind the curtain to pull out an unseen cabinet and came back around to sit beside me with a paper cup full of water.
It'll probably be that way for a while. Chris said he had to do compressions to get you conscious. Luckily for you, our x-rays didn't find any fractures, and you don't show any signs of brain scrambling. You'll have some nasty bruises, but nothing worse than that.
I flicked my elbows down at the hospital gown covering me and fought the fire of humiliation in my cheeks.
My clothes?
Sorry about them. The woman leaned forward to poke a cautious finger through my hair around the scalp and seemed satisfied to find nothing there.
But they were growing sprouts from the organic material we found you in, and we figured better safe than sorry. Same with your personal effects. But you're clean, so you don't have to worry about any infections or internal growth.
Both relieved and puzzled by her words, I downed the water she'd given me in a few greedy gulps.
So, what hospital is this?
A rueful chuckle burst from the woman's lips, and she shook her head.
I'm afraid it isn't at all, really. This is the Fur and Fang Veterinary Clinic, or at least it used to be. I'm Dr. Alicia O'Brien, the Chief Medical Officer for New Wilderness.
I stared, my heart skipping a beat at the memory of that name. New Wilderness. I was still here, still stuck in this nightmarish place with the monsters that had... Wait, why am I the only one?
My friends...
Cautiously, I looked around for any sign of Matt or Clara.
There were 2 others with me, a boy and a girl around my age. Did you see them?
Her kind eyes lost some of their glow, and Dr. O'Brien sighed wearily.
Did you happen to come here in a gray Toyota?
Oh no. Please, God, no.
Yes,
I squeaked. My stomach lurched into a sickening knot. She stared at the floor for a moment, a look of remorse on her tired face.
Our patrol spotted a gray car speeding away just before they got to the scene. A boy and a girl matched those descriptions. With all the anomalies around, we couldn't chase after them, so I honestly have no idea where they went.
It felt like the floor fell out from under me, and I sat there, stunned. Matt and Clara had left me. They had left me to die, to be ripped apart, eaten, devoured, like a package of hamburger helper. And they hadn't even looked back. No, that can't be true. This lady has to be lying. She just has to.
Can I use your phone?
I gathered my hospital gown around me, doing my best to hold my composure. Dr. O'Brien handed me a square, black smartphone from her trouser pocket.
You might have to walk around the room to find some decent signal, if there's any at all. Ever since the mutants started showing up, cell service has been terrible. None of our landlines work either.
My feet hit the cold floor tiles, and I sucked in a breath at the tingling sensation it brought. Standing, I swayed, but paced around the room until a solitary bar popped up in the upper right-hand corner, and I dialed Carla's number. Nothing. The call dropped before I could even hear a dial tone. Come on, come on, I grumbled under my breath and tried again. Again, the call never even rang. Just 5 minutes. For God's sake, I just need 5. The phone began to ring, and I listened, mentally begging Carla to answer.
Hello?
Carla. I almost broke down in tears at the sound of her voice.
Carla, it's me. It's Hannah. Where are you?
The long pause followed.
Oh my God. Matt, it's Hannah. It's freaking Hannah. She's alive.
Matt's voice echoed through the speaker shortly after hers.
Hey, Hannah. Is it really you?
I couldn't stop the grin from crawling across my face, and tears streamed over my cheeks.
Yeah, it's really me. The park ranger found me, so I'm safe. You guys alright? I thought those things caught you. Yeah, we're good.
Matt chuckled.
That was super gnarly, huh? Did you get it on camera?
Wow, that's your first question? For some reason, this stuck in my brain more than usual. Matt and Carla had one-track minds about our blog, but this, they hadn't even asked if I was okay.
Matt, where are you guys?
I demanded, with more force to my voice this time, and my smile began to melt.
Those creeps attacked, and you both just took off.
More silence. Through the hushed static, I thought I heard them whispering to each other on the other side, as if arguing over what to say. Carla came back on at last, with a heavy, reluctant sigh.
We're in Cincinnati.
What? I almost dropped the phone, my mouth hanging open.
What? Carla, you guys left me behind. I'm still here, at New Wilderness. You drove 4 hours to Cincinnati without even coming back to look for me? We thought you were dead.
She whispered, and it seemed she started to choke up, her voice cracking with partial sobs.
Hannah, we didn't mean to. Honestly. But we had to get out of there, and... Why didn't you call somebody?
My tears returned, but not out of joy. The anger and hurt boiling over after months and months of keeping it bottled up.
Those things tried to eat me. How could you just leave and not at least tell the police? We thought about it.
Matt tried to sound apologetic, though I could recognize the fake charm he used on the streets to talk down angry policemen.
We ran into a bunch of soldiers close to the county line, and they were super pissed to find us there. Seriously, Spielberg, we didn't want to get sued for trespass. Are you serious?
To hear him try to humorously use my nickname now, after everything, sent me over the edge.
You scummy, low-life coward. You left me behind to die, all for a video, and you didn't even have the decency, the common sense, the balls, to go and tell someone where I am. What the actual hell is wrong with you? Hannah, please, we didn't...
Carla tried to interject, but I was a volcano, and the eruption wouldn't stop. Shut up, Carla! I snarled through gritted teeth, remembering all the fines, the creepy homeless people chasing us, the irate policemen calling my parents. All for clicks. All for a stupid blog that I never appeared in because I couldn't lie as well as they could.
Forever, shut your stupid mouth. I'm so sick and tired of you two doing this to me. I could have died, and you weren't even going to tell anyone, were you? You weren't going to call my parents, or the cops, or anyone, because you didn't want to get charged for being the dumbest pair of morons in the universe. I told you it was a bad idea. I told you not to. But do you ever listen? No. We'll call someone, okay?
Matt sounded irritated now, as if he had a right to be.
Look, we'll call Carla's mom, and maybe she can work out a deal.
Don't bother. I hissed as my rage grew to a crescendo, my hand gripping the phone so hard I heard plastic begin to crack under the strain.
Just don't, all right? I'll take care of myself. We're done. I'm done. Screw you both. Screw your stupid blog, and I swear, if I ever see either of you again, I'll break your worthless noses.
I jabbed my thumb into the red end call button and tossed the phone onto a nearby table. My vision tinged crimson, and I hurled my balled fist at the dry wall over and over, with a high-pitched scream of bitterness. At the final blow, the sheetrock crumpled under my knuckles. Pain flared in both my hands and chest, and I slumped to the floor in a puddle of hot tears, sobbing. I rested my forehead against the wall and berated myself for being so stupid. Mom had always told me that they weren't good friends. She warned me so many times. Had I listened? No. I'd wanted to prove to her that I was grown up, that I could handle myself, that I knew what I was doing. And what did I have to show for it? I was marooned, stranded in some hellscape nightmare with my only two friends, having left me high and dry the second things went south. Two gentle hands smoothed over my trembling shoulders, and Dr. O'Brien knelt beside me.
Hey, it's okay. You're okay. Just take deep breaths for me.
I couldn't see. Hot tears coated my face, and my nose ran like a faucet.
Your phone. I think I cracked it. I'm sorry. Don't.
She pulled me closer into a warm, soft hug and patted my back between both shoulder blades.
It's just a phone. You've been through a lot. I'd be upset too.
She held me until the tears stopped and guided me back to my bed to hand me a box of tissues. My fingers pulsed, and I could see the torn skin bleeding, the flesh around them red and swollen.
Did I break it?
I whispered, embarrassed as the doctor inspected my poor hand.
I don't think so.
Dr. O'Brien poked at my fingers until I winced in pain.
But these knuckles are going to swell like golf balls now. At least you didn't punch the fridge door, or we'd be looking at a broken wrist. I'll clean these cuts and get you some ice.
The soft swish of a door opening caught my attention, and from the opposite side of the room, a girl walked into view. Both of her arms were full of folded clothes, and a pair of scuffed tan-colored hiking boots hung by their laces from one elbow. She wore close-fitting khaki pants tucked into sets of combat boots and a black polo shirt. A leather pistol belt sat atop her hips, adorned with numerous small pouches, and the black grip of a handgun stuck out of a holster on her right side. A long knife in its scabbard hung from the opposite hip, and I recognized the bleach blonde hair from the girl who had helped rescue me. Our eyes met, and she beamed in a similar recognition.
Hey, you're still kicking. Wow, that hand looks rough.
My face almost melted with shame, and Dr. O'Brien threw the girl a stern, raised eyebrow look.
Hannah, this is Jamie Lanson. She's one of the rangers who brought you in.
All in a day's work.
Jamie winked at me, and her expression softened a little at seeing the tear streaks on my face.
You're pretty lucky, you know. Chris insisted on searching the shoes after his flashlight glinted off your camera. If it weren't for him, we never would have found you.
Sniffling, I nodded and tried to bring his face up in my mind. Those sapphire-colored eyes, his rugged jawline, but it was hard to focus with the throbbing in my hand and the sting of betrayal still burning in my chest. Jamie shuffled closer and held out the clothes.
These are mine, but I've got more so you can have them. You should fit, since you're smaller than me. And look, I even dug up a pack of underwear, brand new.
The way she said it, so optimistically, and yet undoubtedly knowing that such a thing was hardly noteworthy, struck me as funny, somehow, and I couldn't help but grin. As an only child, I'd always wondered what it would be like to have siblings, especially sisters. Someone to talk to, confide in, and share with. Mom and Dad were pretty tight-lipped about their reasons for only having me, but in the moment, it felt nice to imagine having a cool older sister like Jamie to defend me at school. She'd probably have decked those preppy downtown girls and their upturned noses. That'd be fun to see. Her own grin flashed, wry and pleased, across Jamie's sharp face.
There's that smile. See? I knew you were tough. Those brain shredders better watch out for you.
My eyebrows must have gone clear to the ceiling.
Brain shatters?
The creature that almost killed you. Dr. O'Brien pulled a clipboard off of the foot of my bed and scribbled something down on it. It's a sigh organic, one of the rarest and most dangerous anomalies that exists. It works off telekinesis and psychomanipulation, immobilizing prey,
and scrambling their neural firing patterns before ingesting their body. Basically a mental hand grenade with mold issues. Jamie chimed in and crossed her arms to throw me an inquisitive look. But you brought it down, from 10 yards away no less. My throat scratched dry again, and I wished I'd saved some of my water from earlier. I had a dog whistle around my neck, one of those electric ones. I just pushed it, and then everything went blank. Both Dr. O'Brien and Jamie blinked at me, stunned. You killed a brain shredder at close range? Jamie repeated, pointing a finger at each imaginary word like she wanted to be sure she heard me correctly. With a doggy beeper. My face burned, and I dragged my eyes down at my lap. I didn't have anything else. Dr. O'Brien and Jamie both exchanged surprised, delighted smiles. Impressive. Dr. O'Brien scratched something else down on her clipboard. Badass. Jamie shook her bleach-blonde head, emerald green eyes glittering with approval, and pointed to the clothes in my arms. I definitely want to hear that story later. Come on, get dressed and I'll show you around. Dr. O'Brien threw her a sideways glance. Be careful with this one, all right, Lanson? She needs to rest. No crazy stunts for a few days. Minimum. Crazy stunts? Jamie winked and headed for the door to give me some privacy. I think this one might finally be crazier than me. Pulling on my new clothes provided to be tricky with how sore my chest was, but I managed. Dr. O'Brien helped lace my boots for me and gave me some Tylenol before walking me to the door of the clinic. I'll check in with you ever so often. She patted my arm with a gentleness that eased some of my jangled nerves. If you need anything, my door is always open. I made a grateful smile. Thanks. She strode back into the dimly lit interior of the clinic, and just as I turned to go, something caught my eye. A door stood not far to my right, slightly ajar. Through the cracks between the door jamb and the door itself, I could just make out a room beyond, with tables, shelves, and various pieces of laboratory equipment. Dim blue light filled the space, and I figured it to be some kind of ultraviolet lamp to keep bacteria at bay. I almost shrugged it off, until I saw the eyes. 2 milky white eyes gleamed back at me from the shadows, unblinking and wide with a strange mania. Dark, greasy hair floated around the still pale face, and a slack jaw displayed stubby, peg-shaped teeth. Black nylon straps ran under the armpits of the creature, holding it suspended, and I realized that the thing was surrounded by some kind of clear fluid in a large, upright tank. Everything all right? Dr. O'Brien watched me from a few feet away, her face partially obscured by shadow. I could have sworn I saw something like a curious glint in her eyes, but the moment passed too quick for me to be certain. I'm fine, I blurted, and pushed my way through the double doors. Somehow, plunging into a forgotten corner of Appalachia felt safer than being in that room, with its humming machines, chlorine smell, and something horrible trapped within walls of glass. Part 4. Stepping through the front doors of the clinic, I felt the humid night air hit my skin, and invisible fingers of the wind ruffled the nearby grass. 9-foot-tall, woven wire fences lined the little gravel driveway that ran past the 2-story clinic building, reminding me of the time I'd gone to the Cincinnati Zoo. A nearby wooden sign bore green painted arrows pointing in different directions, 2 oriented right for Maintenance and Carnivore Cove, while a 3rd pointed left for Herbivore Barns. 100 yards away, I could see a tall, dark structure that stretched in both directions, jagged and black against the night sky, with spools of razor wire all along the top of it. A wall. Wow, it must have been, 16 feet tall? Maybe 20. Cool whispers of a breeze brushed across my face, a welcome reprieve on an early September evening, heavy with the sweet aroma of flowers. I didn't know much about plants, but it smelled amazing, like vanilla and lemon, with orange and lavender thrown in.
Overhead, a dazzling tapestry of dark navy blue stretched from one end of the horizon to the other, coated with millions of shining stars, and the silver moon hung right overhead. I'd never seen a sky so dark, so clear of intrusive light, and it took my breath away. All around, I could hear the low hum of nocturnal life, some of which I recognized, like the chirping of crickets, croaking of frogs, or the hoot of a distant owl. Others were far more bizarre, unplaceable in my head, like the roar of something reptilian, or the scream of what sounded like an elk, but deeper. Several of the cries, especially the ones furthest away, almost seemed human in their tone, the primal shrieks sending a chill down my spine. Jamie waited next to a small side-by-side ATV, its red paint half covered in chunks of dried mud. Seeing me gawking, she waved toward the sky.
I know, right? Like the world's biggest light show. Wait until your first thunderstorm. Those are wild here.
I trudged over to the ATV, still taking everything in, the world lit by the soft glow of moonlight.
It's incredible. I've never seen this many stars in Louisville.
Something in Jamie's face fell, her smile fading into a jaded half-grin.
Yeah, well, when you lose 3/4 of your population, the world gets a whole lot darker.
Wait, what? My eyes must have been big as footballs, big as Jamie sighed and jerked her thumb towards the ATV.
Come on, I'll explain as we go. It's been a quiet night, so we won't have to rush.
I climbed into the little cart beside her. Jamie's AK and nylon chest rig snuggled between us like a loyal dog. She flipped a switch, and we started to roll with a low electric whine.
Nice.
I nodded at the cart in a weak attempt to break the silence.
Battery powered?
Jamie's carefree expression returned, and she pushed the accelerator down to speed on to the left of the signpost.
Uh-huh. Ethan Sanderson, our chief mechanic, rigged up a bunch of our old vehicles for electric power. The entire park was refitted to run off solar and geothermal power a few years ago, so we've got juice to spare as long as the batteries hold out. Good thing, too, since fuel's getting harder to find and we have to save it for patrols.
We bumped over a few potholes and whizzed between a line of tall fences. I glimpsed eyes watching us from inside the paddocks. Antelope, zebra, and hefty rhinos with their ears flicked our way. The scent of dried grass and manure blew past my face, and 4 buildings loomed from the dark, 2 on each side of the road. They were massive sheet metal pole barns, with small slits of yellow light peeking from between numerous square windows higher up, cloth drapes cutting off the rest of the lights. I caught the low hum of human voices from inside as we drove past, and the faint echo of a guitar.
What is this place?
I craned my neck at the barns as we passed, curious.
We're kind of like a big open-air zoo.
Jamie pushed some stray golden hairs from her face.
I used to be a tour guide, drove buses, and talked about conservation. But ever since February, things have been crazy around here.
Clinging to a handle welded to the roll cage, I thought back to what I'd seen in the forest.
I take it that's when those creatures showed up.
The tires of the ATV crunched on the gravel around a little bend in the drive. Then Jamie gave a small nod.
By the dozens. I've seen plenty of weird stuff out there since it all went to hell. Brain shredders, puppets, ringer heads. There's no end to the freaks that crawl out of the woodwork. Some of them aren't so bad, like the deer with glow-in-the-dark antlers, but the others...
My skin crawled at the expression of hatred and fear that mixed on Jamie's face. She struck me as the strong, confident type, the kind of person who didn't get rattled easily. All things I lacked.
Are we safe here?
I eyed the rifle wedged between us. Jamie pointed without even looking at the shadow of the big wall to our right, which ran parallel to the road we drove on.
As long as that stands up, we are. I helped build it. It took us weeks of work. Most things that could fly over it are small, so we're good.
Most. Swallowing hard, I tugged at my seatbelt and eyed the wall.
Where did they come from? It's called the breach.
Jamie scratched at the back of her head, as casual in her tone as if talking about a bad day at work.
Dr. O'Brien thinks it's some kind of hole in our reality, putting out all kinds of radiation and electromagnetic energy. According to her, since nature always seeks balance, The energy tries to imitate the world around us, but ends up producing freaks instead of good copies.
The air ached inside my lungs, and I winced at a bump in the road, my ribs still sore.
So, those things that attacked me, they were people?
Jamie shook her head, a half-curious, half-morbid grin on her face.
Technically, no. I mean, yeah, they look just like us, but if you cut one open, on the inside they're all wood, rot, and black goo like plant sap. All organics are made like that, half flesh, half plant. The technos are the ones that look like machines, but if you look close enough, there's the same black stuff inside them too, only it's closer to meat than plant. That's why they can feed on each other for energy when they don't have humans or normal animals to hunt.
My mind flashed back to the floating ball of shoes, the way it caught and reeled in each of the moon-eyed people and crushed them into dust like a giant set of teeth. I remembered that enormous eye in the middle, of all that sinew, the slithering tendrils, and how it watched me with a detached glare. Monsters. After years and years of pretending, I'd somehow stumbled upon real-life monsters.
So, what's your deal?
Jimmy caught me off guard, cocking her blonde head to one side as we drove on.
I mean, no one in their right mind would come this far if they honestly knew what was happening. What's a girl from Big City, Kentucky doing way out here?
My face flooded with embarrassed heat.
I was with my friends filming a blog.
Oof. Jimmy threw me a sympathetic grimace.
Let me guess, when things went down, they
ran off and left me to die. I cringed at the memory and let a shock of loose hair hide my burning face. Once a loser, always a loser. For a moment, neither of us said anything, loose gravel pinging under the cart as we zoomed along.
You know,
Jamie broke the silence with her pointer finger in the air like some esteemed professor.
It is said that he who runs first has the smallest member. Sounds like your friends were operating under major teeny wiener energy.
Stunned, I blinked at her, but Jamie just raised one eyebrow as if what she'd said was straight out of a textbook, and wriggled her pinky finger in a suggestive manner. A ticklish sensation welled up inside my chest, and I started to chuckle. Jamie laughed with me, the two of us giggling up a storm as we drove along, and even though it hurt, it was the best feeling in the world. Crazy. One of my best friends here, and she's totally crazy. The road opened up into a wider asphalt parking lot, with faded white painted lines and cracks etched by months of weathering. To my right, the wall came into focus now, a huge main gate made from welded plates of thick steel, guarded by men with rifles who paced on the ramparts like old-school cavalry troopers. Long wooden logs made up the wall, buried vertically into the ground, their ends sharpened to points in the air, with walkways bolted to the inside. Towers made from old shipping containers stood every 100 feet or so, and two circular sandbag rings lay in the center of the parking lot, with two plastic tarps covering whatever was inside them. On the left, a long, rectangular one-story building squatted with a red roof and brown staccato walls. A sign next to the double front doors read, Visitors Center, and Jamie parked next to 4 other ATVs.
all right,
She pulled the handbrake with a swift click and grabbed her equipment from the seat.
let's get you checked in.
I followed her up a small footpath that snaked between a row of cherry trees still dotted with a late crop of crimson berries. On the other side of the little orchard, a beautiful 3-story timber-framed building stood tall, carved from ornate logs, and finished like a gargantuan log cabin. It sported a forest green sheet metal roof and an upper deck, with balconies on the 3rd floor that seemed to be a blend of princess castle and rustic outpost. Warm yellow lights flickered in many of the windows, and a row of wide steps led up to the polished oak double doors, with a sign to one side that read, Elk Ridge Lodge.
This is us.
Jamie trumped up the steps ahead of me.
I hope you don't mind stairs. Our elevator's been broken since May? First world problems, right?
Jamie held one of the front doors open, and I shuddered in pleasure at the sensation of chilly air conditioning on my skin, before the room beyond stopped me dead in my tracks. It looked like one of those luxury resorts all the ultra-pretty girls from social media went to. a place my mom would call Golden Toilet Rich. Lush rugs covered the polished hardwood floorboards with bear, elk, and owl designs woven into them. A chandelier fashioned from antlers hung overhead, with electric lights that flickered just like real candles, and a swirling staircase nearby arched into the floor above, with shining pine handrails, held in place by bronze fittings. Satin curtains were draped around the many windows, though I noticed they were all pulled shut, dark green like the rooftop. "Wow," I gasped, and Jamie made a modest shrug.
The perks of being a ranger. You get the best beds and the most graves. But it gets hot as hell in here during the day since we only turn the AC on at night. I gotta take it easy on our power grid. Still,
Shaking my head, I turned in a half circle and took everything in with hungry eyes.
it's gorgeous.
Jamie sighed in the same, somewhat sad way she had back at the clinic, her green eyes staring into space.
Hey, you should have seen it before. I had my 21st birthday party here, back when things were normal.
I couldn't help but feel sorry for her, and yet any words of condolence stuck in my throat. This place baffled me. On one hand, there were exotic animals, beautiful buildings, and state-of-the-art equipment, enough to make me wish I could buy a ticket for the next tour bus. On the other hand, a palisade wall now ringed everything, manned by men with guns, and my newest friends never went anywhere without an AK at her side. It felt like a twisted, upside-down, bizarro world, a mix between the upscale US and third world Africa. I stood there, frozen in the luxurious foyer of the lodge, and wondered what I'd gotten myself into. At last, Jamie seemed to shake herself from whatever thought she'd been stuck on.
Come on, Sean's office is this way.
She sauntered toward the hallway on the right side of the elegant stairwell, the lights reflecting off the dull, blued finish of her rifle. I can't go back. Matt and Clara wouldn't come back for me, even if I called and pleaded on hands and knees. I'm stuck here, stuck in this place where those things are still out.
Hey, you coming or what?
Snapped from my musings, I nodded at Jamie, who stood waiting by the hallway, and forced my legs to move.
Yeah, sorry, just thinking.
With that, I followed the blonde ranger into a maze of carved wooden doorways and Indian weave carpets, my anxious heart beating a steady toll against my sore ribcage. Part 5. At the end of the long hallway, we reached a door with the number 14 etched into the golden brown wood grain, and Jamie raised her fist to knock.
You're not taking this seriously.
The man's voice rang out from the other side, and Jamie froze, the two of us exchanging glances without saying a word.
We're not going to stoop to their level.
Another male voice, somewhat deeper and more composed, replied,
There are over 5,000 innocent people relying on those humanitarian convoys. We already screwed up big time with the whole Collinsworth fiasco. And that wasn't my fault.
The other man seemed irate, shouting louder and louder with a nasally voice that reminded me of my alcoholic uncle.
The plan was working. It would have worked if the herd hadn't turned the wrong way. For God's sake, Sean, I can't predict the future. Using mutants was always unacceptable.
The man called Sean replied, his tone carrying an icy warning that I felt even on the other side of the door.
And so is attacking the only thing keeping Black Oak alive. It's not an option, Rodney. Leave the aid trucks alone.
A chair scraped, and angry feet shuffled towards the door.
You're going to get us all killed, playing clean while they fight dirty.
First man hissed with venom in his words.
Those marks of theirs are out there right now, committing more war crimes than Assad, and you want me to just sit by while you...
At this point, Jamie dared to rap her knuckles on the door 3 loud times, though I noted that she seemed paler than before. If she's that nervous, should I even be here? The door swung open, revealing a lanky man with a silver-colored ponytail and braided Viking-style beard, clothed in well-worn army fatigues, scowling at us. Inside the room, another man sat behind a brown wooden desk crammed into one corner, wearing a black New Wilderness polo shirt. He had darker hair, his square jaw clean-shaven with a much more muscled physique,
reminding me of a famous Superman actor that Carla drooled over. Both looked surprised to see us, though the one behind the desk seemed happier about it than the man by the door.
Ah, Jamie, perfect timing.
The dark-haired man waved us in, with a thin smile on his weary face.
Rodney, you may go.
The man by the door glared at him, but stalked past us out the door without so much as a word. Jamie stood in front of the desk and snapped a quick salute.
Evening, sir.
Behind the desk, the man let out a weary sigh and rubbed the bridge of his perfect nose with one hand.
Jamie, I told you don't have to do that for me. That was Randy's thing.
Of course, sir.
Jimmy lowered her arm, but maintained a position of attention.
I just wanted to check the new recruit in with you before I set her up for the night.
At that, he rose from behind the desk, and the man offered me a hand with a handsome smile.
Sean Hammond, head of operations.
Don't stare, don't stare, don't stare.
Hannah Brunn.
I sputtered, unsure if I should salute as well, and tried not to devour him with my eyes. He mentioned for us to sit in a few chairs positioned across from him. Mine was a soft, low back armchair with green velvet lining, deliciously soft against my back. I focused on that, enjoying the comfort to keep my mind off my nerves and social awkwardness.
I take it Carter still thinks he made the right call.
Jamie glanced at the door, her eyes narrowing with disapproval.
You'd think after the emergency election he could have taken a hint.
Sean pushed a few loose papers into a folder on his desk.
He regrets more than he lets on.
I think if Rodney Carter could regain command, he'd do anything to make up for the massacre, even if it meant doing worse to win the war. Stretching in her seat until the lower vertebrae of Jamie's back clicked softly, she rolled both eyes.
Randy would have ripped him a new one from...
Randy's gone.
Sean's voice fell into a sad, hollow tone, and he held Jamie's gaze with a grim sadness that I could almost feel in the air.
And so is Collinsworth. It doesn't matter now.
At that, Jamie fell silent, her own face taking on a somewhat apologetic wince. I chewed the inside of my cheek, curious but unwilling to speak. I felt like a fly on the wall, a stranger in someone else's house who didn't have the slightest clue what was going on.
So, Miss Brunn.
Sean's warm smile returned, and he laced his fingers together to study me from his chair.
How are you feeling? We were pretty worried when the patrol picked you up. Most people don't survive run-ins with the local wildlife like that.
I'm okay.
I picked at my thumbnail and tried not to remember the way the moon-eyed people had grinned down at me.
She killed a brain shredder.
Jimmy burst like a little kid who couldn't keep a secret, her green eyes glittering. Sean's tired face stretched into an amused, disbelieving smile.
No kidding.
I literally fell down and pushed a button. My ears burned. I wasn't used to so much praise. Certainly not if it was something that I'd done by accident.
It was luck, really.
It always is.
Sean rubbed at a scar on his left arm that looked as if something had grazed him. Perhaps a bullet, though I was no expert on such things.
You know, the first time I saw a freak was in that same area. The camping turnoff where your friends left their tents, actually. Thank God there was only one echo spider tonight, and not 6.
Echo spider. Curiosity in my brain begged for answers, but the other two had been pulled back into their own silent thoughts once more, leaving me marooned in the uncomfortable presence. Not wanting to poke my nose into things that didn't concern me just yet, I settled back into the cushions of my chair in silence and thought about how I wished I'd pestered Dr. O'Brien for another cup of water. Once again, Sean fixed me in place with a stony expression that made me feel like I was back in the police station in Louisville.
I need you to be as truthful as possible with me on everything. I can't have people on my force who I don't trust, and I can't trust you if you lie to me. Do you understand?
I nodded, glad that the desk obscured how much my knees were trembling.
Tell me everything from the start. Where you came from, why you're here, the works. Be as thorough as you can.
He reclined in his chair,
and Jamie watched me from hers, both of them curious and somewhat wary. Here goes nothing. Recounting every detail I could think of, from the day Matt and Clara found the old map in the library to the moment the brain shredder attacked, I kept both eyes on my lap in humiliated anxiety. Everyone here praised me like some kind of hero for merely surviving, and I felt stupid explaining that I was just a nobody camera girl who'd been dumb enough to follow her friends into a place she didn't belong. I did my best not to tear up at the mention of Matt and Clara's betrayal, and had to pause a few times when I thought about the moon-eyed people, my stomach turning sick at the memory. Here. I looked up from stuttering at the end of my tale to find Sean had placed a can of lemon-lime soda in front of me. Figured you've earned it. Puppets are no joke, especially in numbers. He poured himself a different drink from a fancy amber-colored bottle and offered a similar little glass to Jamie, who took it without question. Sipping the fizzy beverage, I let my guts settle down and shrugged.
Thanks. In the end, I blacked out after they found me and woke up in the clinic. The other two ran all the way back to Cincinnati, so that's about it.
Sean threw a glance at Jamie, his chin cupped in one hand. You were there, right? In your opinion, does all this check out?
100%.
Jamie downed her shot glass and stifled a cough.
Her ID seems legit, and her story makes sense. Besides, if Elsar is getting desperate enough to send unarmed civvies in with nothing but a camera, then we're doing way better than we thought.
Elsar. The word flew out of my mouth before I could stop myself, and I wanted to die of embarrassment at their combined looks my way. Sean shook his head and made another reassuring smile. It's fine. I'm sure Jamie can fill you in on the details. For now, I'll try and keep it short. Did you see any soldiers in gray uniforms on your drive into Barron County? Tight-lipped, I bobbed my head up and down, not wishing to open my mouth again and seem even more stupid than before. That was Elsar. His eyes hardened, and Sean leaned on his desktop with both elbows. Mercenaries hired in by Sheriff Warnow to keep order around here. Trouble is, keeping order means killing all of us, then taking over the park. We've been fighting them for months now. Mercenaries in Ohio. I frowned at my thoughts getting the better of me.
But how come no one ever said anything? I mean, someone had to have known, or told the media, right? The government could intervene.
Jamie snorted and picked a stray burr from her rifle sling.
I'd say they're either in on it or just don't care. Warnow refuses to initiate an evacuation for the civilians, so there's never enough people leaving to get attention. Besides, most of the world doesn't even seem to know we exist.
At that, my heart skipped a beat. Carla's words from the car flashed through my mind. Every time I type in Barron County, all that comes up is freaking Wisconsin. For the first time ever, Matt and Carla had been right about a location, and yet this would be the one place they'd never get to show their followers. Because unlike all the others, this one was the real deal. Anyway, Sean tugged open a drawer and paged through another folder, taking out a few blank forms. The point is, Miss Brunn, we probably won't be able to get you out of here for quite a while. We can't risk vehicles and rangers for one person, and Elsar still has air superiority in the outer regions of the country. So, until such a time as we can arrange your safe departure, you can stay here and work alongside the rest of our crew. Jamie perked up a little and cleared her throat.
She can room with me.
They exchanged a knowing look, and Sean made a slight shake of his head. You can't choose for her, Jamie. Fixing me with an insistent stare, Jamie gestured to me.
Do you want to scrub toilets and wash dishes?
This feels like a dangerous trick question. I racked my brain, unsure of how to answer.
See?
Jamie cut me off with a happy chirp and met Sean's unconvinced look with a pleading expression.
She'd be wasted in the kitchens. Come on, I'll teach her everything I know. And besides, everywhere else is full.
Sean seems to contemplate Jamie's words and turns to face me, his tone dead serious. You've got three basic choices, Bron. You can work with our researchers, workers, or the Rangers. The first two are the safest. They stay inside the walls as much as possible and never leave without an armed escort. The Rangers are the most dangerous. It's the department with the highest casualty rate, and there's a good chance that if you're captured, Elsar will torture and execute you. Torture. Paralyzed, I chewed the inside of my lip and fought a vicious war within myself. Everything about the Rangers sounded terrifying, and all I wanted to do was find a quick way home to Mom and Dad. But Jamie had rescued me, and she treated me better than any other friend I'd ever had. I didn't want to disappoint her. Hey. I looked up to find Sean staring into my eyes with a look halfway between pleading and sympathetic. We can find room for you elsewhere. No one would blame you for choosing a safe option. Come on, Hannah. Be decisive. You've always let other people choose for you. Take a freaking chance for once. Rangers. I made myself look Sean in the eye and drew a deep breath. I'll go with the Rangers. Jamie beamed, and Sean granted me a surprised half-smile. Okay. He pushed a few papers my way, along with a ballpoint pen. If you're sure, sign the dotted line. But only if you're sure. Heart roaring in my ear, I scratched down my name. Jamie rose to her feet, and I mirrored her, doing my best to imitate the salute she gave to Sean.
I'll get her settled in, sir.
Sean returned our salutes with a quick, less rigid one. You're responsible for her, Jamie. From now on, she goes everywhere you go.
No problem.
Jamie headed in excitement for the door, and I followed. Hannah. I turned to find Sean holding something black and square out in his hand. My eyes caught the faint white stitching, the plastic collar buttons, and the words beneath a logo with a rhino head on it. New Wilderness Wildlife Reserve. We've lost a lot of good people. He handed me the uniform shirt, melancholy cloaking his tone in a way that made him seem older than the Superman handsome person I'd been passively ogling. When you wear this, you're making a promise that they didn't die in vain. I expect nothing less than your best every single day. Understand? Taking the silky black shirt, I ran one thumb over the white nylon stitching. I won't let you down. With that, I darted out the door after Jamie, casting another glance back to placate the urge to take in Sean's chiseled features one more time. Instead, I watched him slump down behind his desk and pull a small newspaper clipping from the top drawer. I only had a moment, and from the angle I couldn't see clearly what it was, but I thought I saw the silhouette of a slender, red-haired girl in an office setting, smiling for a professional photo. The way Sean held the picture, as if it were a bird's egg, a long sigh racking his broad shoulders, sent shivers through me as I recalled Jamie's words. When you lose 3/4 of your population, the world gets a whole lot darker.